My daughter-in-law canceled my hotel room while I was on vacation, and she had absolutely no idea that I was the one who paid for the entire trip. Every single dollar of it, the flights, the hotel, the rental car, everything, and what happened next changed everything in this family forever. My name is Eleanor Pearl, I am 72 years old, and I live in Charleston, South Carolina, in a beautiful little house on Magnolia Street that I have owned for 31 years. I worked as a senior hospital administrator at Roper St. Francis Healthcare for almost 4 decades, managing budgets, staff, and entire departments, and I retired 5 years ago with a full pension and more savings than most people my age could ever dream of. I am not a woman who struggles, I am not a woman who begs, and I am certainly not a woman who allows herself to be disrespected without saying a single word back. I have one son, Christopher. He is 44 years old, tall like his late father, kind-hearted like me, and sometimes, just sometimes, a little too soft when it comes to his wife. His wife is Stephanie, 38 years old, and from the very first day Christopher brought her home for dinner 7 years ago, something about her energy felt sharp to me, not dangerous, just sharp, like she was always measuring everything and everyone around her, always calculating, always deciding who had value and who did not. I smiled at her that first night. I cooked my best pot roast, I set the table with my good china, and she looked around my home and said, "Oh, it is so cozy here." And I knew exactly what cozy meant coming from her lips. It meant small, it meant modest, it meant less than what she expected. Christopher loves her, and because Christopher loves her, I have spent 7 years swallowing things I probably should have said out loud a long time ago. I babysat Jackson, who is 9 now, and Grace, who is 6, more times than I can count. I drove 40 minutes each way to their house when Stephanie had her girls' trips and her spa days and her lunches with her friends. I never complained, not once, because those babies are my heart. Jackson with his big brown eyes and his love for dinosaurs, and Grace with her curly hair and the way she still runs to me at the door and wraps both arms around my legs like I am the greatest thing she has ever seen in her life. So when Christopher called me back in January and said, "Mom, we are planning a family vacation to Florida in April. Do you want to come?" I said yes before he even finished the sentence. Florida in April, the beach, my grandchildren in the sand, early morning walks with coffee while the ocean breeze comes through. Yes, absolutely yes. Christopher sounded so excited on the phone. He said, "Mom, it is going to be so good. The kids have been asking for you, and that was all I needed to hear." Now here is the part that I want you to understand clearly, because this matters. This is the foundation of everything that happens next. 2 days after that phone call, Christopher called me again, and he sounded a little uncomfortable, a little hesitant, and he said, "Mom, listen, Stephanie found this resort in Clearwater. It is really beautiful, but it is a little expensive. We are trying to figure out the budget." And I stopped him right there. I said, "Christopher, how much is it total?" And he gave me the number. And I said, "I will pay for it, all of it. Consider it my gift to the family. Book everything under my card and do not worry about a single dollar." He went quiet for a moment and then he said, "Mom, are you sure?" And I said, "I am absolutely sure. Book it." So that is what happened. I paid for 4 plane tickets, Charleston to Tampa. I paid for 7 nights at the Sandpro Resort in Clearwater Beach, a beautiful oceanfront property, 2 adjoining rooms, one for Christopher and Stephanie, one for me with a little sitting area where Jackson and Grace could come watch movies with me at night. I paid for the rental car, a nice SUV, so we would all be comfortable. The total came to just over $11,000, and I put every cent of it on my card without hesitation, because that is what I do for my family, because that is who I am, because I have worked hard my entire life so that I could do things like this and feel good about doing them. Here is the thing though, and this is where I made a mistake, not a financial mistake, not a planning mistake, just a communication mistake. I told Christopher everything, every booking confirmation, every receipt. I forwarded him all the emails, but I did not have a direct conversation with Stephanie about the fact that I was the one paying. I assumed Christopher told her. I assumed, and that assumption is what cracked everything open. We arrive in Clearwater on a Thursday afternoon in April, and it is gorgeous, the kind of gorgeous that makes you breathe differently. The sky is that deep Florida blue. The water is clear and warm looking even from the parking lot of the resort. Jackson runs to the lobby doors and Grace is holding my hand and swinging it back and forth, and I feel like everything is exactly right with the world. We check in, we get our room keys, we go upstairs, the rooms are beautiful. I step onto my balcony, and I can see the Gulf of Mexico stretching out in front of me, and I just stand there for a moment with my hand on the railing and I think, yes, this is worth every single penny. The first 2 days are wonderful. We go to the beach in the mornings, we have lunch at little cafes near the water. Christopher and I walk with the kids while Stephanie reads on a lounge chair. And the evenings we have dinner together at the resort restaurant and the kids fall asleep happy and sunburned and full of ice cream. I am in my element, I am a grandmother on vacation with her grandchildren, and there is nothing in this world better than that. Then comes Saturday, day 3 of the trip, and I wake up early like I always do. I make coffee in my room. I step onto the balcony to watch the sunrise, and I notice I have a voicemail from the resort front desk. I think it is strange, why would the front desk leave me a voicemail at 6 in the morning, so I listen to it, and the woman on the recording says, "Hello Miss Pearl, this is the front desk calling regarding your reservation. We received a request yesterday evening to cancel the second room in your party, the room under Eleanor Pearl, and the cancellation was processed. We wanted to confirm and let you know that checkout will need to be completed by 11 a.m. today. Please call us if you have any questions." I stand on that balcony with my coffee cup in my hand and I listen to that message 3 times. I listen to it 3 times because I cannot make my brain accept what my ears are hearing. My room has been cancelled. Someone called the front desk and cancelled my room. I did not cancel my room. I am standing in my room right now. I did not call anyone. I am 72 years old and I am on vacation. And someone has cancelled the room that I paid for with my own money. I set my coffee down very carefully on the balcony table, and I go back inside and I sit on the edge of the bed and I breathe for a moment, because I know myself well enough to know that I need to be calm before I do anything else. I pick up my phone and I call the front desk and I speak to a young man named Marcus, very polite, very professional, and I say, "Marcus, I received a voicemail about my room being cancelled. Can you tell me who requested this cancellation?" And he pauses, he checks something and he says, "Yes ma'am, the cancellation request came in yesterday at around 8:45 in the evening. It was called in from the room next door, room 412. Room 412 is Christopher and Stephanie's room." Thank Marcus. I ask him to please note that I am not checking out, I am not vacating, and I will be coming to the front desk shortly to address this. And he says, "Of course Miss Pearl, we will hold everything," and I hang up the phone. I get dressed. I take my time. I put on my white linen pants and my blue blouse and my good sandals, and I put on my pearl earrings, the ones my husband gave me for our 25th anniversary, and I look at myself in the mirror for a moment, and I say to myself, "Eleanor Pearl, you are a 72-year-old woman who paid $11,000 for this vacation, and you are going to handle this with every bit of grace and dignity you have, and then the other side of you can handle the rest." I knock on the door of room 412. Christopher opens it in his pajamas, half asleep, hair messy, and he smiles when he sees me and says, "Mom, it is so early," and I say, "Christopher, I need to talk to you and Stephanie right now," and something in my voice makes his smile fall. He opens the door wider and I walk in. Stephanie is sitting at the little desk near the window, already awake, already dressed, coffee in hand, phone in hand, and she looks up at me with that expression she sometimes has, the one that is polite on the surface but has something else running underneath it, and she says, "Oh Eleanor, good morning, you are up early." I say, "Yes I am, because I received a voicemail from the front desk this morning telling me that my room has been cancelled." I look directly at her when I say it. Directly. And I watch her face. She does not look surprised. That is the first thing I notice. She does not look caught off guard, she does not look confused, she does not look like someone who has no idea what I am talking about. She looks like someone who expected this conversation but expected to have it on her own terms, at her own time, and is now adjusting because it is happening sooner than she planned. She sets her coffee down and she says, "Eleanor, I was going to talk to you about that this morning. I called the front desk last night because I was thinking, and I just felt like, the kids are with us and you have your room," and she trails off. I say, "Stephanie, finish your sentence please." She straightens her back a little and she says, "I just thought it made more sense for you to stay in our room. We have a pull-out sofa, and the kids could be with you in the evenings, and honestly the resort is very expensive and I thought we could save some money by consolidating." Christopher is standing near the bathroom door now and he has gone very still, the way he goes still when he senses something is about to happen that he cannot stop. I look at Stephanie and I take one breath and I say, "Stephanie, I appreciate that you were thinking about money, I genuinely do, however I have a question for you." She nods, waiting. I say, "Whose money were you trying to save?" She looks at me like I have asked her something in a foreign language. She says, "Well, ours, the family's. This trip has been expensive," and I stop her again, gently but firmly. And I say, "Stephanie, did Christopher not tell you who paid for this trip?" And right there, right in that moment, I see it cross her face, I see the flicker of something, uncertainty, a crack in the composure, and she looks at Christopher and Christopher looks at the floor and I have my answer. "Christopher," I say, "did you tell Stephanie that I paid for this entire vacation?" He looks up at me and he says, "Mom, I thought I mentioned it, I thought," and then he stops and he says quietly, "I think I said we were figuring out the budget and that it was handled. I did not specifically say you paid for everything." I nod slowly. I nod because I am not surprised, I am disappointed, but I am not surprised because Christopher has always softened information when he delivers it to Stephanie. He has always smoothed the edges, always been the interpreter between two worlds. And somewhere in that interpreting, the most important fact of this entire vacation got lost. I turn back to Stephanie and I say, Stephanie, I paid for this trip. All of it. The flights, both rooms, the rental car, the full 7 nights. Over $11,000 on my credit card. Because when Christopher told me about the vacation and mentioned the budget, I offered to cover everything as a gift to this family. I paid for your room too. I paid for your plane ticket. I paid for the car you have been driving since Thursday. She is very still now, very quiet, and the color in her face has shifted slightly, and she says, I did not know that. I say, I understand that now, and I am not angry at you for not knowing. But I am telling you now so that you understand what happened when you called the front desk last night and canceled my room without speaking to me first. You canceled a room that I paid for in a hotel I booked on a vacation I funded without asking me a single question. The room is very quiet. I can hear the ocean through the window. Grace shifts in the bed near the wall, still sleeping, her little arm thrown over the pillow. Jackson is asleep too on the other side. My grandchildren, sleeping peacefully, and their grandmother standing here having this conversation at 7 in the morning because someone decided to make a decision about her accommodations without a single word. Stephanie opens her mouth and closes it and then she says, Eleanor, I am so sorry. I genuinely did not know. If I had known I never would have. And I say, Stephanie, I believe you did not know who paid. But I want you to hear me on this, even if I had not paid a single dollar, even if this vacation was entirely on your and Christopher's budget. Canceling another adult's hotel room without speaking to them first is not something that should ever happen. That is basic respect. That has nothing to do with money. She nods and her eyes are a little glassy now and she says, You are absolutely right and I am truly sorry. I go downstairs to the front desk and I speak to Marcus in person, and I show him my original booking confirmation with my name and my card on it, and I explain that the cancellation was made in error. And within 20 minutes my room is fully restored. Not a penny lost because it was still early enough in the morning that the cancellation window had not fully processed, and Marcus is kind and professional, and I tip him generously before I go back upstairs. I spend that morning on my balcony alone with my coffee and my thoughts and the sound of the Gulf of Mexico. I am not crying, I am not devastated, I am not shattered. I am a 72-year-old woman who has seen a great deal of life. And I know the difference between a catastrophe and a lesson. This is a lesson. A lesson about communication, about assumptions, about what happens when the people around you do not have the full picture. Christopher comes to my balcony door around 9, knocks softly, and I let him in and he sits across from me and he says, Mom, I am so sorry. I should have been clearer with Stephanie about everything. I should have made sure she knew. And I look at my son, my kind-hearted, sometimes too soft son, and I say, Christopher, yes, you should have, and that is something you and I can talk about more later. But right now I want you to go be with your children and your wife because we are on vacation. And I did not pay $11,000 for us to spend the week feeling terrible. He laughs a little at that, a relieved laugh, and he squeezes my hand before he leaves, and I sit back in my chair and I look at the water. The rest of the vacation is different. Not bad different, not tense different, but shifted like furniture that has been rearranged in a room you know very well. Stephanie is quieter around me, more careful, more considerate. She asks me what I want for dinner instead of announcing where we are going. She saves the seat next to Jackson for me at the beach, because she knows he likes to tell me about every shell he finds. She brings me a second coffee one morning without me asking and sets it on my table and says, I thought you might want this, and I say, thank you, Stephanie, I do. These are small things, very small things, but I am 72 years old and I have learned that most of life is made of small things. On our last evening at the resort, Wednesday before we fly home Thursday morning, we have dinner at the outdoor restaurant right on the beach, the sun going down over the water in that spectacular Florida way, all orange and pink and gold, and Jackson has sand on his face that nobody has bothered to wipe off, and Grace is sitting in my lap eating her macaroni and cheese with complete and total concentration, and Christopher has his arm around Stephanie and they are laughing about something, and I sit there with my granddaughter in my lap and my son across the table and the Gulf of Mexico behind us, and I think this is still a good life. It is a complicated life. It is a life with Stephanies in it and miscommunications and voicemails at 6 in the morning that make your heart drop. But it is still a good life, it is still full, it is still mine. I am not the kind of woman who holds a permanent grudge. I am the kind of woman who makes note of things, who files them carefully away, who learns from them and adjusts accordingly. What I learned from this trip is that I cannot assume information has been passed on correctly just because I gave it to Christopher. If I am involved in something, if my name is on something, if my money is attached to something, I communicate it directly to every person it concerns. No more telephone chains in this family. Not with stakes like this. What Stephanie learned, I genuinely believe, is that I am not a background character in this family. I am not the sweet old grandmother who sits in the corner and babysits on request and is otherwise invisible. I am Eleanor Pearl. I am 72 years old. I worked for 4 decades and I built something real, and I show up for this family in ways that matter, in ways that cost me real money and real time and real energy, and I deserve to be consulted, to be informed, and at the very absolute minimum to be asked before someone calls a hotel and cancels the room that I booked and paid for with my own hands. We fly home on Thursday morning. Grace falls asleep on my shoulder on the plane before we even take off, her little head just dropping down against me like I am the most comfortable place in the world, and I put my arm around her and I look out the window as Charleston gets closer and I feel, mostly, at peace. Christopher calls me the following Sunday, which is today, and we talk for almost an hour, a real conversation, the kind we used to have when he was in his 20s and we were still figuring out our adult relationship together. He says, "Mom, I have been thinking about everything and I want to do better at communicating, not just with you but in general," and I say, "Christopher, that is the best thing you have said to me in a long time, and I mean it completely." Stephanie sends me a text message on Sunday evening. It says, "Eleanor, I have been thinking about Florida and I want you to know that I have a lot of respect for how you handled everything. I know I am not always easy and I know we have not always been as close as we could be. I would like to change that if you are open to it." I read that message twice and then I type back, "Stephanie, I am always open to better. Let us have lunch when things settle down, just the two of us," and she sends back a single word, "Yes," and then a small heart, and I set my phone down on my kitchen table and I look out my window at the magnolia tree in my front yard that is blooming right now, big white flowers against the green. And I think, well, Eleanor Pearl, you have done it again. You have come through something and you are still standing and the flowers are still blooming. I am telling you this story today because I know that some of you are sitting somewhere right now in a situation that feels unfair. Something that happened without your input, a decision someone made about your life without consulting you, and you are trying to figure out whether to say something or swallow it again. Say something. Say it calmly, say it clearly, say it with your pearl earrings on if that helps, but say it. You have earned your voice. Do not leave it in the room when you walk out. And now I want to hear from you. Tell me where you are watching from. Drop your city down in the comments below. I read every single one. And if this story meant something to you, if it reminded you of your own grandmother or made you feel a little less alone in whatever you are navigating right now, please give this a like. It truly helps more than you know. And subscribe so you do not miss what I share next. And share this with a friend who needs to hear it today, because sometimes the right story finds us at exactly the right moment, and maybe today this was yours.